Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, nice to see you.
Good to see you, Dr. Paul.
Good. I want to talk a little bit about Afghanistan. Not too long ago, we reported that they dropped more bombs in Afghanistan than ever before last year.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Obama and Trump has talked about winding that war down. But so far, it doesn't look like they're doing it. There's another statistic that was cited today, a UN report, but it was also reported on antiwar.com. And this says that there's a record number of civilians being killed. I mean, almost 44,000 this year so far. And that doesn't sound like they're winding it down at all. You know, I got to thinking when I said that the civilians are being killed, the bombs are being increased, and a lot of these deaths are coming from bombs. They're not in skirmishes on the ground as much as injuries coming from bombs. But this idea of civilians, you know, if a person lived in Afghanistan, I think the line between being a fighter and a civilian has to be a fuzzy line, because it seems like if you're in a small community and there's all of a sudden violence breaking out, you might be considered a farmer and a civilian. But this next time, you might have to have a gun to try to save your family. So, but anyway, they always distinguish this, and this report didn't make us look good, and it didn't make NATO look good. So they asked the Pentagon, well, what's the correct figure on this? Do you concur with this? And they said, oh no, that's way too high. But then you ask, well, what are the Pentagon's figures? We don't keep track. So that's what's going on. The disappointing thing is as usual, a lot of civilians get killed, and as usual, we hear talk about getting out of there, and every day we keep hoping that really will happen. But what is it, 19 years nearly that we've been over there, and it's not getting much better. I just think that people have to realize that if we don't have people sincere about the policy and they follow it instead of this on again, off again, well, we'll do this, but if it doesn't work right, then we'll have to do something else. And even when we finally had victory in Iraq and we left, the massive land forces, we still really own Iraq. The biggest embassy in the world is in Baghdad. So it's the issue of empire, and this is just, it's hard to, pursue a policy that sort of contradicts the empire building, because the empire, they just, keep building and building and building. So there's a little tug going there with the American people wishing we would come home. The support is there, the statistics show that, but right now, this is nothing to cheer about.
Yeah, and the real headline grabber, and this is why we use it as our title, and it was used on the anti-war title too, is that more civilians were killed by the U.S. and its allies than were killed by the Taliban so far in 2019. So we're supposed to be the good guys, and here we're killing more civilians than the bad guys. You talk about trying to win hearts and minds.
Right.
If we're killing more of the innocent people than the others, that's a problem. And it's related to, as you say, to the big uptick in aerial bombing last year, a lot more bombs. But it's also related to the change in the rules of engagement. And that happened, if you remember, back in 2017. President Trump in August said, in the end, we will win. And what he did is he told Mattis to release the rules of engagement. You can do, no, we're not into nation building. We're into winning this war. And so that meant a lot more bombs. A lot more bombs meant a lot more civilians being killed. So that's exactly what happens. So he's singing, changing his tune. We can get into this in a second. We've gone from, in the end, we will win, to Trump just the other day saying, quote, I think Pakistan is going to help us to extricate ourselves. So that's a whole different theme.
I tell you, when we become dependent on Pakistan, that's a real challenge. So I don't see that. This change in rules of engagement, I think, is important because there was so much more power given to the generals on the ground.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go through command, and that probably is part of it too. So I think that's not good news, and that we're going in the wrong direction. There was one other item that I wanted to mention, and that had to do with a boondoggle can you believe it? There was a boondoggle committed over in Afghanistan. They were building a security compound, and the security compound was for the guards who protect, the diplomats. And this was during Obama's period, three years ago, and they had planned to spend $173 million on this compound.
Wow!
But the record now is very clear. It wasn't going well. And they had an inspector come in and said, there's no way that you're going to do this on target or on time or the right amount of money. And eventually they had to admit it. So, and that was after it ballooned from 173 up to $315 million. And it was sort of a strategic type of thing. They were traveling 4 miles, which meant they had to travel in convoys. And it was very, very inconvenient. So now they're putting this in the embassy in order to protect these individuals because that's what's happening. The few Americans that have been killed in these areas, and attacked. But now is the plan is to build something in the embassy, and they're figuring, well, the plan is that we're hoping to get it finished by 2023. So those, you got to fill them if you're going to have a compound and guards and all this activity. You got to have them. So I would say that the odds of really leaving the way we would suggest are pretty close to zero. Even though there has been some reduction in the conflict, I think we have a long way to go before we can be satisfied.
And that just tells you in a nutshell what this whole thing is. It's a huge, boondoggle is the right word, probably even worse words we probably couldn't even use on the air about the whole thing. But this is something we've been trying to convey, and not just us, but a lot of people, that this is a big ripoff. This is a huge ripoff. This company that built this compound, I wonder if they had gold-plated toilet seats, $100 million for a compound, and went up to $300 million, they still couldn't build it. But this Aegis was the name of the defense contractor. They had never built anything bigger than a shooting range. That's just the extent of their expertise. They said, no, give us the contract, we'll do it. And they couldn't do it. They're not going to get punished. I think you have a quote, they're not going to get punished. No. Nothing's going to happen. They'll probably get another contract.
That's right.
They're probably chock full of retired generals and these types of people.
And there's never an investigation. If it is, it comes later on. Inspector generals don't satisfy it. But it is the project. It's sort of like, it fits into my argument that when a bill would come up and Congress would have a vote because there's always waste and fraud and abuse. That's good. We should get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. But I did that. I would vote for it because it's a pretend, and you can't say, no, I'm for waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah.
But I never believed it for a minute because it's the policy that's wasteful, fraudulent, and abuse. It's un-American. It's empire building, and that is where the problem is. So if they think they're going to tinker around the edges and clean up their act and have more efficiency in doing this, it's impossible. It's sort of like making the domestic distribution of welfare more efficient. So that is not going to happen.
And in the change of rules of engagement last year, that was or in 17, we're going to win it now. We're tired of fooling around. Here's a new thing. Here's a new strategy to win. We got to send some more troops in. Remember what Trump said? I don't want to do it, but my generals told me I had to. They've done this over and over for 18 years. Here's our new strategy. Here's our new strategy. And it never works. And now Trump's in a bind. And this is the other part of what we're talking about. A lot of people are getting killed. And then Trump is facing an election. He told the American people, we're going to get out of this dumb war, get out of this endless war. There's an election coming. Pompeo said the U.S. wants troops reduced by the U.S. by the election time, 2020. This becomes an election issue for Trump. He needs to extricate us, he's even said. And so that's why he's turning to, for example, Pakistan. The visit recently of Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, is really, really important because he desperately needs Pakistan, even though last year he cut off all their aid. He desperately needs them to talk to the Taliban, tell the Taliban, please sit down with our puppet government. You've got to figure a way out of this.
Isn't it rather ironic that the great empire turns to Pakistan to bail them out and get them out of this mess.
And they'll give them a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, they have to have a little money on the side of it here. But the trouble is that little money isn't little. It's a big hunk of money, and it all has to do with the military-industrial complex. There's somebody that ends up with the money. It sort of reminds me of what's in the news now about Baltimore. Trump is pretty ruthless in his language, but he's probably saying a little bit of truth about it. So they say, and Trump says, all this money going, I want to know where it's going. Who's getting it? And nobody dared ask that question ever before. But all of a sudden, I imagine all our cities are that way, all the welfare system, the military system, that's why you have all this money spent, trillions of dollars on the welfare warfare state, and we have people on the streets, and there's rat-infected cities, and the money is not going to help the people, and yet the people who claim that this is a problem, well, socialism will solve this problem. Well, socialism is going to solve the domestic problem, and socialism isn't going to solve our international problems either, the way we run things.
Yeah, but Pakistan finds itself in a pretty enviable position because, well, they have some interest too, because the Indians have been close to the Afghan government, which we're close to, and they don't want that to happen. This is a whole big thing. But the idea that the Pakistanis will get the Taliban to sit down with our guys, because the Taliban has said, we are not, here is the prerequisite for getting together and talking directly. U.S. has to announce its policy, firm policy of withdrawal. That has to happen before we'll sit down. So that's a big deal, and that's what Pakistan is trying to help. But here's the other piece of news for today that's important, and this is what Reuters is reporting, that Afghan government has named a team today to begin direct negotiations with the Taliban. The anticipation is that we will agree to the Taliban's precondition that we will announce a withdrawal. So things are moving in motion. Trump needs this. I think more than anyone, understand the political implications, because Trump wants to be able to say, because Biden now came out last week and said, I'm going to get us out of all these endless wars that I supported my entire career. But Trump wants to be able to say, well, I'm actually doing it. We are pulling out.
No, I think that's good news. Let's just hope it keeps moving in that direction. But we will see. And if you'd like, do you have a closing statement?
I would just, if I could close, remind our viewers, our friends out there, that we do have a conference on August 24th. We're going to discuss this and many other things. The lineup of speakers, partial lineup of speakers, a lot of people on Twitter, when I put it out yesterday, the list said, wow, this is going to be action-packed. It is action-packed. These are great speakers. It's going to be a great event, really making the cause an uncompromised cause for non-interventionism and peace. Go to ronpaulinstitute.org/conference. More information, get your tickets. There's lunch, refreshments, community, meeting like-minded people. It's just going to be a great day. It's our fourth one of these in Washington, and we need you to be there. So get your tickets today.
Very good. And though Daniel reports, and correctly so, that there are some openings with some negotiation with the Taliban and the government, and let's hope that happens. I happen to lean toward pessimism right now because it's been going on for so long. Eventually, it's going to end, but it's not going to end easily. I don't think that it's ended in Iraq. We still own it. So the fact that we don't have 100,000 troops there to maintain order, we have fewer, but we're still in charge because we control the military and we control the finances. And the other places that we go around the world too, if they don't do exactly as we tell them, what do? We threaten them with military force, and we threaten to have sanctions on them and use financial means to bring them to their knees. And that's not the way, a decent government should act. So, of course, that is my personal goal. That is the goal of our program and our Institute for Peace and Prosperity, to move in that direction. There's just no good reason for us to use so much energy and money and time and lives pursuing a policy that always fails. Interventionism and dictatorship and the use of force to tell other people what to do. It doesn't work. It doesn't work domestically. It doesn't work well in the economy, and it doesn't work on foreign policy. So it's time the American people wake up and tell their members of Congress and others, it's time to end these wars, and that means just bring the troops home, everybody would be better off. And this idea that we have to phase out, we've phased in, we phased out, and we're there, and there's no reason why we have to say, well, it takes about 5 years, to turn this government over to the people who know and understand what democracy is all about. So I would say, cut it off, get rid of the funding, bring our troops home. The world would be better off, and the American people would be better off as well. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.